It was a time of great invention. People built amazing things. They built cars and airplanes. They built tall buildings that touched the sky. In a city called Belfast in Ireland, thousands of workers built a new ship. This ship was bigger than any ship before it. Its name was Titanic. It was a giant of the sea, a true marvel of its time. People called it the ship of dreams. They said it was a ship that could not sink. This idea captured the imagination of everyone, from the wealthiest families to the poorest immigrants looking for a new life. The excitement was a palpable force, spreading across continents. The Titanic was owned by the White Star Line. They wanted to have the most luxurious ships in the world. The Titanic was their masterpiece. It was nearly 900 feet long. That is like 3 football fields put together. It stood as tall as an 11-story building. The company promised safety and comfort. They said the ship had special watertight compartments. These compartments were supposed to keep the ship afloat, even if it was damaged. This promise of ultimate safety made people feel secure. They believed they were boarding a vessel that had conquered the dangers of the ocean. People all over the world talked about the Titanic. Newspapers wrote stories about its incredible size and beauty. They printed pictures of its grand staircases and fancy rooms. For many, a ticket on the Titanic was a dream come true. It was a symbol of progress and a new age. It represented the best that people could build and imagine. The maiden voyage from Southampton, England to New York City was a major event. Everyone wanted to be a part of this historic journey. The ship was more than just a way to travel. It was a destination in itself, a floating piece of a perfect world. On April 10, 1912, the Titanic was ready. Crowds gathered at the dock to watch it leave. The air was filled with cheers and the sound of the ship's powerful horns. People waved goodbye to their loved ones on board. They felt proud and excited. They were watching history being made. No one could imagine the tragedy that was to come. For everyone watching and everyone sailing, it was a moment of pure hope and wonder. The ship pulled away from the land, a majestic giant gliding gracefully into the open water, carrying over 2,000 souls toward a new horizon. Life on the Titanic was like living in a grand hotel. The ship had different classes for passengers. The first-class passengers were very wealthy. They had large, beautiful suites with private bathrooms. They ate in a huge dining room with a high, decorated ceiling. Their food was prepared by the best chefs in the world. They could swim in a heated pool, exercise in a gymnasium, or read in a quiet library. For them, the Titanic was a floating palace. They spent their days socializing, attending elegant dinners, and enjoying the incredible luxury that surrounded them, feeling completely separated from the cold ocean outside. The second-class passengers were also comfortable. They were teachers, writers, and professionals. Their cabins were not as large as first class, but they were still very nice. They were much better than the accommodations on other ships. They had their own dining room and library. They enjoyed listening to the ship's orchestra play beautiful music. Life for them was elegant and pleasant. They could walk on the deck and look out at the endless ocean. It was a wonderful adventure for them, a chance to experience a level of comfort they might not have had at home, all while crossing the vast Atlantic. In the third class, or steerage, were the immigrants. These families came from many different countries. They had sold everything they owned to buy a ticket to America. They dreamed of starting a new life with new opportunities. Their rooms were small and simple, located deep inside the ship. They shared dining areas and bathrooms. But even for them, the Titanic was better than other ships. It was clean and provided good food. They spent their time together, sharing stories and songs from their homelands. They were full of hope for the future that awaited them across the sea. For 5 days, the Titanic sailed smoothly across the calm Atlantic Ocean. The weather was clear and the sea was like glass. Passengers enjoyed their time on the magnificent ship. The children played games on the deck. The adults walked and talked, breathing the fresh sea air. The ship's engines hummed a steady, powerful rhythm. It felt like the journey would go on forever, peaceful and perfect. Everyone felt safe. They trusted the great ship and the crew who sailed her. The world felt orderly and secure, as steady as the giant vessel beneath their feet. On the night of April 14, 1912, the air became very cold. The sky was dark and full of stars, but there was no moon. The sea was unusually calm and still. High up in the crow's nest, a lookout named Frederick Fleet searched the darkness. He was looking for ice. The ship had received warnings about icebergs in the area, but the Titanic continued to steam ahead at a high speed. The captain wanted to make a good impression by arriving in New York early. This decision would soon have terrible consequences for everyone on board the magnificent ship. Suddenly, the lookout saw something. A huge dark shape was directly in front of the ship. It was an iceberg. He rang the warning bell 3 times and telephoned the bridge. "Iceberg right ahead," he shouted. The officers on the bridge acted quickly. They tried to turn the giant ship away from the danger, but the Titanic was too big and moving too fast. It was impossible to avoid the collision completely. The ship scraped along the side of the massive iceberg. Below the water, the ice tore into the ship's steel hull, creating long gashes like a can opener. Many passengers did not feel the impact. It was just a small shudder, a slight vibration that passed through the vessel. Some people who were still awake thought the ship had just stopped for a moment. They did not know the danger they were in. But deep inside the ship, water was rushing in. The sea poured into the boiler rooms and cargo holds. The ship's builder, Thomas Andrews, was on board. He inspected the damage with the captain. He quickly realized the terrible truth. The ship was taking on too much water. It was going to sink. Captain Smith gave the order to uncover the lifeboats. He told his radio operators to send out a distress signal, a call for help. The message was CQD, the signal used at the time. "We have struck an iceberg," they sent. "We are sinking fast." The ship's orchestra began to play music on the deck. They hoped the cheerful tunes would help keep people calm. But there was a very big problem. The Titanic did not have enough lifeboats for everyone on board. There was only space for about half of the passengers and crew. A night of confusion and terror had begun. As the front of the ship sank lower into the water, the reality of the situation became clear. Panic began to spread among the passengers. The crew followed the rule of women and children first for the lifeboats. Families were separated in the chaos. Husbands said goodbye to their wives and children, knowing they would likely never see them again. Many people were brave. They helped others find their way to the boat deck. They gave up their own chance for survival to save someone else. The scene was filled with acts of both desperation and incredible courage as people faced an impossible choice. The lifeboats were lowered into the freezing dark water. Many of them were not full. People were confused and did not understand how much danger they were in. They hesitated to leave the perceived safety of the giant, well-lit ship for a small boat in the Black Ocean. By 2:20 a.m., the Titanic's bow was completely underwater. The stern rose high into the air, silhouetted against the stars. Then, with a terrible noise of twisting metal and breaking structures, the great ship broke in two and disappeared into the Atlantic Ocean. Over 1,500 people were left in the icy water. The survivors in the lifeboats could only listen to the cries for help from the darkness. They were cold and terrified, floating in a vast empty sea. A few hours later, another ship, the Carpathia, arrived. It had heard the Titanic's distress calls and had raced through the dangerous ice field to help. The crew of the Carpathia rescued the 705 survivors from the lifeboats. They were the only ones who were saved. The world was shocked by the news. How could the unsinkable ship be gone? How could so many lives be lost on such a modern and celebrated vessel? The sinking of the Titanic changed the world. New laws were made to make ships safer. Every ship was now required to have enough lifeboats for every single person on board. Ships also had to hold lifeboat drills so passengers and crew would know what to do in an emergency. An international ice patrol was created to watch the North Atlantic and warn ships about dangerous icebergs. The Titanic is a sad story, but it is also a story that taught us important lessons. It reminds us to be humble and to always be prepared for the unexpected. The ship of dreams rests on the ocean floor, but its story still echoes today.